Alrighty, I am going to show you all how to run front-end tests contributing to GitLab. If you don't want to run the whole GDK, which sometimes your machine may not be able to do, but you would still like to contribute to big epics such as this one, where we are trying to convert our jest specs to use ViewTestDetails, which we do for like 90% of the jest specs, but there's some very old ones which are not doing that and use things such as the view mount component helper. And yeah, so we'll just walk through running tests locally and making this change and seeing what happens. So I picked an issue for us from this epic. So I went down to this list of issues in the epics and I picked this one. So I'll just open that one up. All right. Like any good open source contributor, I should probably say that I'm going to take a look at this. All right. So I have cloned the GitLab, the main GitLab project I forked, and I cloned my fork locally. So if I look at my remotes, my fork is the origin, the main GitLab repo is the upstream. I wrote a little snippet that walks through setting this up, including installing the prerequisites, which are Node and Yarn, and forking and cloning and creating branch for us to work on. I've already forked, so let's create a branch for us to work on. I am going to go back to my project. You notice I'm at my project directory. I can run branch-v to see what branch I'm on, and I'm just on the master branch. So let's go ahead and check out a new branch. It's kind of nice when we put the relevant issue number in the branch name, because then GitLab can automatically associate things. So I'm going to just copy this issue ID into my branch name, and I'll go ahead and put my initials and say something about what I'm doing. Convert jest to VT. Yeah, sure. All right, great. Now, whenever I do this, I should probably make sure that I'm on top of the most recent master in the main project, not my fork, because my fork may not be relevant and updated. So I'll go ahead and also fetch upstream master. Hopefully that works without taking that long. And I'm going to try to drag out my sentences right now so that, okay, awesome. Cool. So I've got upstream master. I'll go ahead and reset my new branch to upstream master. Great. So I can check out branch V. I'm on my new branch. I'm on the latest upstream master. That's great. I'll go ahead and push my new branch up. It's not ready yet, obviously, because I haven't done anything, but I'll push it up so that the upstream relationship is set, and I can just push commits whenever I'm ready. And I can create a merge request right here from the terminal. So that's great. Okay, let me go in and clear these up. And let me open this in VS Code. I like to use VS Code to edit things. So going back to this instruction set, which I'll include in the YouTube descriptions, the very first thing you want to make sure you have is Node.js and Yarn installed. If you have ASDF, this is very easy, and you can just run ASDF install at your project directory. I already have ASDF installed, and I have all these things already installed, so that's the option I went with. Or you can choose to do this manually, which is going to be really dependent on your system, on all sorts of things. So good luck. I know you can do it. We've already created a branch to work on. Great. So let's run the specs. All we have to do is call yarn, run, jest, and then path to spec. Great. Now, if I do this, let's go ahead and copy this one. If I do this, boom, see if it works. It's working. That's awesome. Okay, there's one step missing from this, which is you might not have the node modules downloaded. And so if I try to run yarn run jest, it kind of will blow up because it says, hey, things that are in node modules aren't up to date. You probably need to run yarn install. My dependencies probably don't match the yarn log file. Please run yarn install. Hopefully yarn has things cached and it's not having to build everything from scratch. But thankfully, yeah, yarn, it's pretty fast. The second time, the first time you run this might be a little bit slower. But now I run yarn run jest. I just pressed up on my keyboard to get back to the that command I just ran. And boom, we're running tests. Great. So let's go back to the issue that we want to contribute to. I want to convert these tests, these folders, away from the old style so that they use ViewTestDetails. Let's look at the epic again. So the old style, so we can search for specs that import. Yeah, we want to update specs using the deprecated helpers to use the ViewTestDetails helpers like shallow mount or mount. Cool. So let's look at this one. I just copied that path. I am hitting Control P to do fuzzy file search. I found the file. Oh, there's the file. Let's run it. Oh, but I also see it's already using the latest ViewTestDetails. Well, that's great. It sounds like that one's already done. Let's see if it works. That's great. It works. Well, so that one's already done. Let's see these other ones here in the directory. That one's using ViewTestDetails. That one's already done. And that one's using ViewTestDetails. Man, this is making my job easy. This one's already done. And so is this one. Great. Ah, but these ones are not. Okay. These ones are not. Okay. But it looks like these ones are. Since I'm a member of this project, I could probably already check these off, but you may not be able to. And also you can see that some of these files may not even exist anymore because some of these issues were created a long time ago. Things kind of changed since then, we can already see. But there are some that we will need to address. So let's first get a test running before we start changing things. So let me copy, I'm copying the relative path for this file, which is not using ViewTestDetails. And I'm going to yarn run jest, paste that path in. Let's see what happens. Oh man, we get a failure, and it's a failure. Let's see if we can understand what's going on here. Cannot locate module test fixtures epic mock meta.json mapped as this path temp test front end fixtures. Well, let's see what's inside this directory. I'm already in the GitLab folder. Let's see what's inside this directory. Wow, that directory doesn't even exist. Well, this isn't a huge surprise if you're familiar with what these are. So some of our front end tests will take as an input data generated from the backend. Because we want to avoid setting up the whole backend, how do we get this data generated from the backend? Well, there's a little trick that we can use. We can steal these fixtures from the main GitLab repo. So rather than generating them locally, I'm actually going to steal them. And stealing is in quotes. I don't endorse stealing, but I do endorse sometimes not running the fixtures. So what we're going to do, this is a bit of a wordy instructions to figure out how to run specs that need these front-end fixtures. What we're basically going to look for are jobs, these front-end fixture jobs that ran on the main GitLab repo And we're going to try to find a job that generated the fixture that we're looking for. And we're going to download that locally and extract it and copy those contents. And then we'll be good to go. So let's go to the main GitLab commits page. And let's look for, oh, look, there I am. Let's look for a pipeline that passed, which had a fixture stage. This one did not have a fixture stage, so we will not look at that one. Let's see if this is one that has a fix. There we go. Awesome. Yes. And we could see these, how many is that? 5 jobs for these fixtures. So I'm going to go ahead and middle click on each one of those to open them all up. We're looking for the job that has epic mock meta JSON. All right, let me close these other tabs. So let's just go ahead and start here. Oh, look, it's already telling us what got printed up. No, these are just actually the names of the specs. Let's go ahead and look at the artifacts. That may be helpful. So I'm going to go to browse the job artifacts. I'm going to hit temp, tests, front end, fixtures, EE. All right, we are looking for epic. There is no epic here. So this isn't the job. Let's look for the next job. So I'm actually going to just copy this job ID, pop, paste it into my URL. All right, do we see epic? Nope. Okay, I'll close that. Let's copy this job ID, paste it into my URL. See, do we see epic? Nope. That's all right. Let's close it out. Starting to get a little nervous, but I think it's going to be okay. Paste it into here. Ah, there's epic. Yes. Boom. That's the one we want. Okay, so these are the artifacts we want. I'm going to download artifacts archive. Awesome. And they showed up in my downloads. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my terminal, and I will go to my downloads. Well, actually, let me just copy them here into. I'm going to call this temp fe. I'll call it temp downloads. So I'm making a directory called temp downloads. I'll cd into temp downloads. I'm going to move my front end fixtures that I got from here. Yeah, I'll move these into this directory. Awesome. And so then I'm going to unzip my front end fixtures. Boom. So now you see I have all of the artifacts here, including my epic ones. Awesome. Okay. So what I want to do then is I want to make dir p, and I have these instructions here. So I'm going to make dir p temp test front end fixtures EE locally. This is going to make that fixtures EE directory that we're looking for on the main project. You'll notice that this directory, when I move these files and I clean up my temporary directory, not temp, but temp downloads, you notice that this is all git ignored. So this is why I had to pull our artifacts from the pipeline. They're not going to be in source control because they're computed and derived. So we don't check them into source control, which is why I have to create this directory. So I've created that directory, but now I want to copy into there recursively. So I did -r. Let me go to the downloads, temp, tests, front end, fixtures, EE. All of the directories on there, I want to copy them into temp, test, front end, fixtures, EE. Boom. All right, let me go ahead and remove temp downloads. All right, and so now that I cleaned up my temp downloads directory, you notice there's no changes, but now fixtures, I've got some fixtures, and I got the ones I'm needing. So I am going to run yarn, run just, here we go. Nice, now it's passing. That's great. What was I doing here? Oh yeah, I needed to convert this to ViewTestDetails. So we were just extending this and calling mount component with store, we don't need to do that. We can use ViewTestDetails. So if you're not familiar with ViewTestDetails, this is all pretty much the same, but I was really hoping to find an example, but I think I closed it out. Let's see if I can get back to it by searching for VTU. Yes, 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 awesome. All right, let's see if we can see an example. Okay, here's an example of ViewTestDetails being done. You see we have some create component function. Let's see if we have that kind of helper. So it looks like we don't have that kind of helper. We're just doing this in a before each. That's fine. But one of the things that's sticking out is you notice that this option we pass to the mount is actually called props data, not just props. I'm pretty sure store is going to be called the same thing. I can actually just look up ViewTestDetails. They have pretty good documentation. So I can just look up ViewTestDetails and see what gets passed to this mounter. And it looks like we can pass props data and anything else that we would normally pass to there. I'm not sure where store would go to, but I'm pretty sure it would go there as well. But we might need to do something like view use viewx. So we'll see what happens there. But let's just play around and see what happens. So I am actually going to remove this, and I'm going to remove this because we want to get rid of those. And I like resolving errors. And so I noticed in the epic it says we would prefer shallow mount. So let's see if we can do that. And import this from GitLab, not GitLab, it's ViewTestDetails. Awesome. Okay. So the thing about ViewTestDetails is they actually create, instead of getting access to the view model, it creates a ViewTestDetails wrapper. So that's why you see throughout a lot of our test code, we have wrapper, emphasizing this is the ViewTestDetails wrapper. So I'm gonna go ahead and rename that to wrapper. Don't need that. We will create a wrapper by calling shallow mount, and instead of the component, we don't need to do any kind of extending. We can just pass this directly through there. And remember, this was called props data. Okay. And these $sign functions, this is a view model thing. When I say view model, I'm saying view model thing. What we're actually looking for is wrapper.destroy. Okie dokie. So then instead of accessing the direct view model, we want to use the wrapper elements. So we can use classes to determine if a class exists or not. So let's use that instead of accessing this class list thing. So we can do wrapper classes block. Look at how much prettier that was. And we could do this. We could do wrapper classes. There we go. Now for this, which is looking for a child, we can use find and then .exists. So we can use find and do any kind of query selector here, and that's going to give us another ViewTestDetails wrapper. We can see if this is going to exist. Now, because we're finding for a button, something tells me we might need to actually full mount this. Shallow mount is going to not expand whatever other components it sees. So it's going to stub out all the components. So this button happens to not necessarily be this component's child, but a child component's child component child, we won't find it. So if this test fails, my next thought is that we want to use mount instead of shallow mount. And so let's see if that happens. But I'm going to go ahead and do wrapper find. And this will always be not null because it's going to return a ViewTestDetails wrapper. So what we actually want to do is say it exists to be true. We want to say this has got to exist. Even if it's empty, even if it doesn't find this, it's always going to give us a ViewTestDetails wrapper. And so there's such a thing as like an empty ViewTestDetails wrapper of something that doesn't exist. So that in that case would be false. All right, let's see if this passes. Awesome. All right, awesome. And as I was expecting, this one actually fails. And that's because this sidebar action is probably within a grandchild component. So I'm actually, and I can confirm that by, let's just look at this file. Oh, no, wrong button. Let's look at that file. Yeah, you see the button isn't in this immediate template. It's in this child. So that's why we'll need to do a full mount. Or we could change our test, but that's kind of out of the scope of what we're trying to do here. So let's try this out again. Awesome, we passed. We converted this to ViewTestDetails per the instructions. All right, let's see if we can do one more. Man, this has got, I think this has the same number of tests. Okay, but we're masters at this now. We can go ahead and use next tick. That's fine. We don't need the view and the view extend, and we don't need this helpers thing. This one is coming view mount component helper. We don't want that. The scope of the issue is, let's try to shallow mount this from ViewTestDetails. Great. Okay, I don't need this. Okay, and instead of VM, we're going to call this wrapper. So this is wrapper. And instead of a $ method, it's actually just destroy. Great. Oh no, this is doing a not so great thing, which is directly setting the state of a view model. We don't want to mutate our view model in a test. But wrapper has a cool method for doing this. Yes. Yes, where we can actually update the props and see what will happen. So we can actually call this, we can call wrapper.setProps sidebar collapse. I hope this works. If it doesn't, I know what another thing we can do. But what this is basically confirming is that we can be reactive to this because the wrapper has already been set up. And so we're going to update one of its props, and all the things reacting to it are going to update, which we're waiting for with this next tick. And then we could do our confirmations here. So we'll do wrapper classes wrapper classes. So we're just trying to confirm that we have these classes. Yes, that's right. Oops. Oh. All right. So now here we are trying to find a child. Something is telling me that we might not be able to shallow mount this, but that's fine. That's kind of out of scope with what we're trying to do here. But let's see if find works. And this is going to give us a wrapper, not an element. So we want to say this is going to exist to be true. When this returns, whether it's found or not, it's always going to be not null. It always gives us a wrapper. So all of these null or not null checks actually need to be converted to these exist to be true checks. And then to get these properties, we can use the attributes method to get see what data attributes they are. So what I'm really interested, what I'm kind of interested in doing would be something like, let's say attributes, and let's see what we get. Let's just throw this in there. I think it's gonna fail. Hopefully it will. And we'll see what we get. Okay, we don't have any red squigglies because we updated all of the references we got rid of. That's great. So let's copy this. I probably should have run this first before updating it. Okay, yep, as expected, it's not finding this one because I used shallow mounts. And the sidebar, this is probably a more nested button, and that's fine. We're not really looking to change this too much. So let's just, that might be a nice thing to do, but it's outside the scope of just converting it to ViewTestDetails. Great, awesome. Cool, and so I was expecting this failure because rather than actually asserting on the elements data set and stuff, which we could totally do, and we can always access the underlying element by .element from the ViewTestDetails wrapper exposes that attribute. But we try to use the ViewTestDetails wrappers methods as much as possible. And here we can, rather than creating separate expectations for each one of these things, let's just create one expectation for these two properties. So I'm not super concerned about type, class, or ARIA label. Maybe it'd be nice to be concerned about ARIA label. So, but to only match on some properties, instead of doing 2 equal for this whole attributes that's giving me this whole object of 5 different properties, I'm going to do 2 match object. And so I'm going to pass into here ARIA label, add a to do, and I'll just copy these. I'll have to get rid of the, oh gosh, I have to get rid of the plus, but that's fine. Boom, 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 boom. Awesome. Let's see what happens. Awesome. Boom. Okay. I can run this whole directory now and see if we're good. Awesome. Okay. I think we're ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and commit my changes. And I'm going to say, what did I do? Update epic or EE epic sidebar items test to VTU is, I guess, the acronym we're using for ViewTestDetails. I'll add a link to this epic. That's great. That's all I really need to do. That's fine. So I'll commit this and I'll push this. Remember, we already did the whole branch checking out, so I can push up to this. I know where it's going. I haven't changed that. There's the branch. I'm going to go ahead and click on this to create a merge request. So I clicked on this, and it's trying to create the merge request within my fork. I want to create it from my fork to the forked projects master branch. So let's go ahead and change that. So I want to go from my fork to, I want to go to the main project. There's the main project's master branch. That is the goal. Oh, that's why review the target project for, okay. I guess I had mine set as private to test things out at some earlier date, which is why it defaulted to the previous behavior. I should go ahead and set mine to public because there's no reason for it to be private. And that would be just fine. So I'll go ahead and add a description. This MR resolves. I'll go ahead and add a link to this issue by moving the remaining non-VTU specs to VTU. Okie dokie. And I'll assign this to me. I'll hit create merge requests. We'll let it go. It's creating the merge requests. And after this merge request is created, the GitLab bot and other things will should pick it up and help triage it to certain reviewers so that they can review it. And hopefully in a matter of a day or two, you should have a MR merged. Yeah, so thanks for watching. Glad this was successful. Have fun contributing to GitLab.